After a little bit of a delay, we finally got this thing working again. I apologize for being a few seconds late. We have with us Mike Ruehrdanz from Lindemann Chimney. Mike, if you don't mind, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, who's with you, and your company.
So my name is Mike Ruehrdanz. I've been with Lindemann Chimney for 34 years. Our company has been in business since 1969, and we're the premier chimney company in the area. And we wanted to do a little chimney training for you guys today. So we're going to cover a variety of topics, and answer questions, do whatever you guys need to help train you guys. And then also with me is Barrett. He's been with the company how long?
7 years.
7 years. So between us, we'll cover the topics together. And that's it. We're ready to go.
All right. What's going to be the first thing we'll talk about?
And then we're going to start with masonry chimneys.
All right, let's go ahead and, you want to share your screen or you want to just chat?
We'll pull up a screen here. Hang on.
All right. All right.
Okay. You still
And we are looking at your screen right now, just so you know.
Perfect. That's what we want. All right.
Go.
Okay, so right now, what we have up on the screen is essentially the anatomy and main components of a masonry chimney that we are looking at during our inspection process. And so, really we're focused on the hearth, which is your non-combustible area in front of the fireplace. Your firebox, which is going to be the inner brick area of the actual fireplace itself. So that's where your log grate's sitting. That's where your ash pit is located. So that's the visible firebox area. The firebox is the visible area that you can see straight on once you kind of look inside of the fireplace opening. Then directly up above it is going to be your cast iron throat damper and lintel. That's easily seen just via flashlight, peeking your head inside of the firebox and looking up. Once you open that throat damper, the next area above that is your smoke chamber. So your smoke chamber essentially funnels all your heat, all your creosote, any of your, when the fireplace is in use, anything that is being vented upwards through the chimney, that's your starting point, essentially. And that's going to filter into your flue lining. Your flue lining can either be something that's been repaired, which is going to be a stainless steel lining inside of there, or a clay flue tile, which are 2-foot sections of clay, and that's just a terracotta tile.
So as far as you guys go, when you're looking at the firebox, make sure there's actual fire brick in there. They're yellowish in color. Some of the really old homes don't have fire brick, so that's something you guys should be identifying for sure. Check for wood underneath the. A lot of times there's wood underneath the ash pit. I'm sure you guys have seen it. If you look down into the dump, the ash dump, there's plywood underneath there. That's something that we usually look for too. Then you got clearances to combust.
Chat about that a little bit. So when you're talking about plywood underneath, you're talking about looking at the underside of the fireplace from the basement looking up. Are we looking for plywood just underneath the firebox or just underneath the hearth, I mean? And then also the hearth extension? Does either one matter?
Underneath the hearth is acceptable, being a support in that area. It's when the plywood actually is penetrating into that ash pit cavity, into the underneath the firebox floor. So that's usually seen if you go down into the basement and you're either looking at the flooring underneath, and you can see wood going in there. You can see the floor, the subfloor going into the cavity, or if you have access to the cleanout door below the fireplace, and you put a flashlight or camera in there, and you can see wood inside of that area as well. That is an area where that wood is not acceptable to be present.
All right. And then you mentioned something else about, being repairs with a stainless steel liner. And I know you gave me a whole bunch of brochures. We're going to make that available for everybody. Is that like the most common permanent fix, or do people go in there and like try and fix the tiles, or put the mortar back in there? What's more common and most cost effective?
Yeah. If you're going to keep the fireplace a standard normal fireplace, yeah, stainless steel makes sense. A, because it's lifetime warranted, and B, it's going to be way less expensive than, because for you to lay new clay tile in a chimney, you'd have to tear the chimney down to pretty much to the smoke chamber, which would be very costly. So stainless steel liner is what makes sense, because it's warranted and it's way less money.
Thank you. All right. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
No worries. So we get that question a lot, and it's not something where you repair a single missing mortar joint and that's a suitable solution, because that's kind of putting your finger into a dam that's failing. You're just going to have another spot reappear later on down the road. So it's kind of a one and done fix with that stainless steel restoration.
There are products out there that you can coat linings with, but we've found them to be not very good products. So when you put a stainless steel liner in there, it's done. It's lifetime warranted. You don't ever have a problem again.
And is there a price range when somebody puts a stainless steel liner in? And is there a wrong way to put it in when we're looking at it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There's definitely a wrong way. There's always a ratio of the size of the fireplace opening is going to dictate the size of the flue lining that is necessary to draft that natural draft appliance.
Is that something you're going to talk about so we could recognize that?
We can kind of go into rough figures for that to give some general ideas on that. That's not an issue. We can kind of show you how that easy calculation goes. You want to?
Oh, you mean you guys? Oh, this. I'm sorry. That's combustible material.
That's combustible material.
I mean, we can just talk about it. We don't have a screen for it quite at this second, but I mean, your average round liner should be a 12-to-1 ratio from the square area of the opening to the square area of the flue lining.
And we're talking about the firebox opening, right?
Correct.
So if you put, you said, is there a wrong way to do it? Well, yes, if you put the liner inside of the existing clay tiles and it doesn't meet the criteria, then the fireplace will not completely draft, and then it'll end up getting some soot or carbon monoxide in the house. So a lot of times we have to actually break the tiles out to put in the proper size liner.
The only way that acceptable, or it would be acceptable to have a smaller size liner inside of the fireplace would be if there was a draft fan located on top of the chimney to make up that difference.
I just looked at a house in Kenilworth. They had like 6 fireplaces yesterday, and 3 of them had those draft fans up there. I almost wish I do have some pictures of them, but if you guys have one too, I wouldn't mind popping those on the screen before we hang up today, just to show people what they look like.
Yeah, of course. And that's an acceptable solution to a small, an undersized flue lining. The only, kind of negative or downfall of that is the fireplace will not operate properly or draft properly without that fan running. And if the homeowner wants to use the fireplace in the event of a power outage, it's not going to work.
That is a big deal.
Correct.
So back to our clearances then. Thank you.
So clearances, this is in your IRC code books, but from the 6 inches from the sides of the firebox opening before combustible material can be present, 6 inches to the top from the top of the opening if that combustible material is 1.5 inches in thickness or less. If it's anything greater than 1.5 inches thick, then it's 12 inches from the opening. So, sometimes you'll have these kind of wood trim pieces underneath a mantle shelf within that 12 inches. That's acceptable, but then once that mantle shelf that's going to have a greater projection off the wall of 1.5 inches, that has to be located 12 inches from the top of the fireplace opening.
All right, so let's take that drawing that you have on the screen right now. All right, so it looks like it's a 1x material that's kind of framed and flat around the brick.
Correct.
The bottom of that wood frame material, that could still be within 6 inches, right? But the shelf that overhangs it, that has to be at least 12 inches away, or does everything now have to be 12 inches away because it's more than 1.5 inches?
Once it is greater than 1.5 inches thick, then automatically that has to be located at the 12-inch mark or higher.
Everything does, right? So everything in that drawing that we're looking at on the top picture, the gap, the brick has to be at least 12 inches.
Correct.
Okay, that's good to know.
Next up, we have, so this is kind of like what Mike was talking about, the condition of the firebox itself.
Can you go back just 1 second?
Sure.
Quick? What about TVs over fireplaces? I see that a lot.
So TVs over fireplaces, there's no specific code that we're aware of that's uniform across the industry.
Okay.
Generally, what you'll be able to find is the manufacturer of the TV will tell you how high the bottom of the TV can be close to heat-producing materials.
Fair enough.
So it's not anything like an industry standard. Whenever you encounter those, it's generally recommended that there's some sort of mantle there or something present for heat deflection. But that's I would usually say no less than 12 to 18 inches from the top of the fireplace opening if they want to save their appliances.
And do these openings, does it matter if it's wood burning or if it's gas burning?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not. This pertains to all masonry fireplaces, no matter what form of media is inside of the firebox being used. So then for the firebox itself, when you're inspecting it, as Mike has touched on, that picture that's labeled A is the general color hues of a refractory brick that is designed to be inside of a fireplace. Sometimes you'll see pictures like you see on the upper left that is labeled C. That's generally just your traditional type masonry brick. It's not specifically refractory, designed for high heat. So go ahead.
I think what you guys need to be looking for on the fireboxes is just general condition of the brick. I mean, obviously the picture B, it clearly has taken on a lot of moisture, and that's probably going to be a firebox rebuild. You can't really tuck point that. A lot of the fireboxes can be tuck pointed, but if the bricks are like in picture B, And a firebox rebuild is what, Barrett? $2,000?
$2,000 versus a maybe $300 firebox tuck pointing. It's a great difference between the two in scope of work.
So when you guys are looking at it, I guess my point is, if it's really falling apart, don't say it can be tuck pointed, and try to stay away from giving prices. I know, I mean, you guys usually try to, but they try to get you down it. You know, an entire firebox rebuild is pretty expensive. So, as you can imagine, you're taking all those bricks down and relaying them. That's quite a project. So.
We hear a lot about home inspectors, you know, saying, well, if you put gas logs in there, then that's no longer a problem. Please tell me why that statement is a bad statement.
That statement is a bad statement in the fact of just let's if you circle back to the condition of the flue system. The condition of the flue system has the same standards and same criteria that have to be met, whether it be wood burning or gas logs. So if there's failures in the flue system, it has to be repaired before that fireplace is considered in operational condition. So it doesn't matter what's in there. You know, my analogy with gas logs is, you know, most gas log systems put out anywhere from 30,000 to 40,000 BTUs. Well, that's in comparison the same amount of BTUs of your standard water heater. Well, you wouldn't unsafely vent your standard water heater back into your home or into a failed system.
And it's actually, I would consider it almost more dangerous because you're dealing with carbon monoxide getting into the home. So obviously that's more of a hidden defect than if you had a wood burning fireplace, you'd smell the smoke. But with carbon monoxide, obviously you can't smell it. So, and the other thing about gas logs is they don't, like a wood burning fireplace will put off, when it's really roaring, will put off more heat than a gas log set. But a gas log set will put off a consistent amount of high heat because it's steady, where a wood burning fire will go up and go down as you're feeding it wood. So they should be treated equally. The whole system, the smoke chamber, the firebox, everything should be treated equal if it's gas versus wood.
And then, I mean, how perfect does a firebox need to be? For example, a hairline crack in some of the mortar.
That's semi-acceptable, where it's just an issue of maybe tuck pointing and putting in some refractory mortar. That's a quick, easy repair. You know, you are going to have some cracking in there, some hairline cracks, just from purely from usage and expansion and contraction within that area. So that's bound to happen. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, those aren't the worst defects to be present within that area. So, you know, those are on the minor scale. And then, you know, really the only time where that kind of gas statement comes into play, where you can put in a set of gas logs into a failed masonry chimney system, is if you were able to identify that those logs are specifically designed in a vent-free application. And vent-free log sets will always have a chain placard to the log set itself and burner system identifying them as such.
Typically they have an oxygen sensor, right? That's their biggest difference.
That's the biggest thing. Yes, they're designed to burn back into the home. They have an oxygen depletion sensor, and should the oxygen levels within the space that they're being used go too low, the unit is designed to turn itself off.
You know what that number is offhand? I don't.
We do not. It's different from system to system in each manufacturer.
Gotcha. All right, I'm interrupting you too much.
No, you're fine. No worries. So yeah, the next area we kind of touched on as well is the hearth. So basically, the hearth extension is its projection into the room is dictated by the size of the fireplace opening. So if you measure the firebox and it's 6 square feet or greater, it can be no less than 20 inches in depth off the wall. If it is 6 square feet or less, then it is 16 inches is the minimum depth on that. Always has to be constructed of non-combustible materials. Where the hearth and the firebox floor meet, there cannot be a gap present where any combustible materials in a wood burning application can fall in between there, because that's going to fall and settle onto the subfloor most likely. And you know, there has to be one present. And I don't, for masonry application. So if you're inspecting a masonry fireplace, and yes, it might have a set of gas logs in there, there's no concerns of embers jumping out or, you know, scorching any combustible materials. Still needs to have a hearth present for a masonry fireplace. Dampers, you know, generally masonry fireboxes, you're going to see your cast iron poker style damper. So really it's just a function test of, does it open and close, function properly? When the fireplace is in use, is there any sort of concern that the damper will close while the fireplace is operating?
As far as you guys are concerned, anything that if that damper is even slipping in the slightest, it should be called out. Because
I was going to ask that, you know, as well, like hinges that are busted, or maybe when it's closed, it's notched off to the side, and you have gaps in left and right. It should be basically completely shut, right?
yeah,
Okay.
right. But I mean, the major thing is a slipping, you know, and if you're inspecting it and it's slipping, can you imagine if the customer actually uses it, right? They can't, you know, they barely can use these things, right? So anything that causes that thing to not really be solid as far as opening and closing, you guys should call that out as, you know, potential problem.
How hard is it to repair a damper like this, or is it? And I'm assuming you're going to talk about the dampers at the top of the chimney too.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if it's something that's simply where the plate and handle need to be adjusted and put back on track, and the frame looks to be in good condition, it's not cracked or hanging down, that's a simple repair. That's a quick, maybe 10-15 minutes. But if it's something where the frame's cracked, the handle might be missing, the plate might be missing, generally that's when we will go to that route that you just spoke of putting a damper on top of the chimney. That's the path of least resistance, because those cast iron dampers are set in place in original construction. So in order to replace a failed throat damper with a new cast iron throat damper is tearing down a portion of the firebox walls to get that old damper out. And then we have to relay the bricks, and as we're relaying the bricks, we're setting a new cast iron damper in there. That's much more involved than going ahead and putting a damper on top of the chimney.
Would you mind giving us like a rough price range? I don't want to hold you anything, but it's always nice to share with our clients because they ask us.
Of course. You know, a top damper is going to run right around $800 to $900 installed, fully lifetime warranted. You're talking to put in a traditional throat damper, $1,200 to $1,500.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lintel.
So where the lintel meets the face brick of the firebox, or any of the facing materials, is one area that sometimes is overlooked. So if you kind of peek your head into the firebox, you look up, you'll see that support lintel. and it's generally located right below the cast iron damper frame. You want to make sure there are no gaps present in that area, or you cannot see up and through that. That's a big issue when when the fireplace is being used. Heat can transfer up the walls in between those gaps to the framing and studs and the drywall that are directly up above that.
We see that a lot, so always look for that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've seen insulation and a bunch of other stuff in there as well.
Sure.
And, sometimes it's like, I don't know, and repairing that, filling that up. I'm going to keep hitting you up with dollar signs here. What are we looking for that? Is it simple, hard?
I wouldn't quote that one because we don't know. I mean, if the wood is really, really close, we might not even want to seal. We want to tell the customer to remove the wood.
Yeah, that might be a bigger thing, because I mean, we've seen charred wood present in that area where we've had to completely open up the walls and get separate contractors involved, and now you're talking a few thousands of dollars.
And as I told you before we started, I used to work for a suburban fire department out here, and I know that we've had a couple of fires that started and went right up that chase. So once we ignite that wood, it's a pretty serious deal.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
You want to touch on it?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the smoke chamber, guys, is the little upside down funnel area that you'll see. That's where a chimney fire is the hottest. If you ever have a chimney fire where the flames are going through the entire chimney, and that has to be coated with a refractory mortar. Almost every fireplace, when it's built, is not coated with refractory mortar. So either you'll see the empty bricks in there with no coating at all, or you'll just see the mason slapped a light coat of regular mortar. The regular mortar looks very, very smooth. That's how you can tell, versus the refractory mortar has more fibers in it. But this is probably the most often neglected area. And this is something that you guys, you're not running cameras, but you can see the smoke chamber when you open the damper. You could talk about how that is supposed to have a refractory mortar in it. Costs on that can be, a lot of times we have to take the existing damper out. So then we might have to replace the damper. So by the time we do that and parts of the smoke chamber, we're looking at $2,000, $2,500 for the total thing. So not real cheap. But a lot of chimney companies ignore this area, and it's equally, if not more important than the flue tile lining part of the chimney.
Now, we've gotten some feedback, not from your company, but from other companies. So I call this out, and this is kind of a big stickler for me, that the smoke chambers, and just about every single one I find, they're done poorly. All right.
Sure.
So you're seeing the same thing. I'm not alone. That they're
Correct.
done poorly, the smoke chambers. All right.
But I am telling you that
I'm getting feedback from other chimney sweeps saying that, well, this chimney sweep professional came out here and said it's fine, you don't have to do it, nobody does, and everything's okay. Now, I know one of the pamphlets you gave me I looked at, and I'm going to get those posted up on our YouTube and shared. I got them on the drive now so everybody can have them. But that kind of says just the opposite, right? I mean, this is not something that we should be taking lightly. Is that correct?
Absolutely not. And we get plenty of people that get second estimates, and they say you don't have to do this. Well, it's clearly, again, I'd like to reiterate to all of the guys on this call that we don't make up the rules. It's the NFPA that makes the rules, and they recommend a high heat refractory mortar in this part of the chimney. The code was changed in 2006, and I would assume that it was changed because people's houses were starting on fire. And Charles, you saw one, right? So
exactly. No law is ever made for no reason. Somebody died or somebody lost something.
Yeah.
For any law to change.
So when we do a repair on a chimney, If we do a liner, we always parge the smoke chamber. Sometimes we'll parge the smoke chamber and the flue tiles are in good shape. That's fine. We'll do a parge on that. But we do a liner, we're parging it. It's just part of what we do.
Now, I know a lot of guys will have some small cameras. There's one that is actually pretty cool. It's called a ferret, and it goes on a short 2-3 foot stick, and it's got a flexible end on there. But what's nice about that is they're able to look down at that smoke shelf. How often do you find like animals, birds, debris, combustible materials on that smoke shelf? And is that something that's part of a normal cleaning?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it is. Cleaning that area is our standard cleaning process. So that's generally the removal of whatever debris piled up on there. In order to access that area, if there's a cast iron damper in place, we simply just take out the handle, take out the cotter pin that's holding the handle to the plate, remove the plate whenever possible so we can physically get our hands back there and pull out that material.
And going back to the refractory mortar, is it safe to say that it should be so thick that I shouldn't even see the pattern of the brick when I'm looking at it? Is that a safe statement?
That is correct. That is correct. General thickness on that is anywhere between half an inch to an inch of thickness, and that's what the manufacturer recommends for its installation, and that's the proper thickness is so that it meets its UL listing and testing, so heat does not transfer to anything on the backside of that mortar.
And I have to admit, I'm over 90% of every smoke chamber I look at, I'm able to see bricks, right up in the front, looking straight up without any special equipment.
Yep. Yeah, well, I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah, almost every time.
Good stuff. Thank you.
So that's perfect examples of what you were just talking about. That's simply just looking up through the damper in these two photos without any special equipment. So the biggest thing is seeing any sort of brick faces present without the covering of a refractory mortar. As you can see on the right hand side, that is the actual NFPA code that dictates each smoke chamber should be parged. And then the biggest offenders is when you see face brick that have been used in the smoke chamber, so you see the actual brick cores and holes that are present as well. And essentially why parging's done is because we're not going to tear open the walls or face of the fireplace to get in there and measure to make sure that it is 8 inches thick of solid masonry to ensure heat transfer doesn't occur within that area.
One thing to note on the picture above is that is not an ideal smoke chamber. Notice how it's flat 90-degree cut and the flue is off to the side. So nothing that could be done about it except for we can try to put an angle of refractory mortar on it to make it pitch better towards the flue. So that top picture could very well be a fireplace that has a draft issue because of the way that smoke chamber is put together. The one on the bottom, how it's corbelled, that's at least going in the right direction and it's heading towards the flue. So the smoke has got a good path. But that one on the above is a terrible smoke chamber. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. A lot of sense.
And so we can improve it. We can't move the flue over, right? The chimney's been built already, but we can improve that by making a pitched so the smoke has a better run towards the flue, if that makes sense.
It does.
We can to some degree remanufacture the smoke chamber to be a better shape. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
So here's an example of materials that are too close. or combustible materials that are too close. This was simply just removing the cast iron damper, and someone came in and retrofitted a mantle surround that actually became almost a part of the firebox, and just took a flashlight just to see this charred wood present.
And this was in the smoke chamber?
Yes.
Or, well, right behind it.
Right, yeah, exactly.
There was a wall there, but as you can see, the wood is charred.
Yeah.
We see this stuff all the time, guys. So the smoke chambers are very important.
So as we've said numerous times, flue linings are going to refer to the vent system that will take the byproducts of combustion up and out of the home safely. So that can be a clay tile lining, that can be a stainless steel lining, or a clay tile lining that's been resurfaced with a heat-rated refractory mortar, as Mike talked about earlier, to resurface that and fill in any gaps between the actual tiles themselves.
You cannot have an unlined chimney. So you guys see those in the older homes where there's no clay tiles. So the clay tiles are put in there to, in case there's a chimney fire, they can handle the heat, or at least they can handle it once, to protect. So one row of brick cannot contain the heat of a chimney fire and can start the combustibles on fire on the other side. So that's why they put the clay tiles in to begin with. And that's why if you scan it with a camera and there's mortar missing, that flue lining is no longer capable of doing what it's supposed to do, and it needs to be repaired or relined. In most cases, relined is the option.
Can you tell us that process of relining? What does it entail? What am I going to see when I look up from the bottom, knowing that it's been relined, or relined properly, more specifically?
Well, we have that one brochure has a picture on it. I don't know if you want to pull that up now, or
I may be able to. I'm not ready to do that. If you have it there, pull it up on your screen.
I mean, we could do it later. We're gonna go through that. You want to just, yeah, let's just do it later then. That's fine, because we have a good picture on there that'll show exactly that.
And that's one of the brochures that I'm going to make available to everybody, right?
Yes.
All right, so that they can include that in their reports.
So here are 4 examples of why a failed flue systems, or flue systems that are unsafe for use. So your first one in the upper left is going to be where 2 tiles meet. You can clearly see that the mortar joint that should be present is no longer there, creating a sealed flue system. Picture B is an actual crack in the clay flue lining. So any sort of crack present dictates the flue needs to be relined or repaired. C is what Mike just talked about.
Let's go back to B. So one comment on B. So I know you guys are looking at that picture and saying, come on, really? That little hairline crack is a problem. But when you have a fire in that fireplace, that crack can get up to about 1/4 inch, because there's expansion going on once you heat up that flue. So that hairline crack is a legitimate crack when you're actually burning the fireplace. We do a little experiment where we take a flue tile outside in the parking lot and light it up so it cracks, and then we watch it sink back, and it's amazing how much those little hairline cracks expand when you heat them up. It's amazing.
And when they open up, obviously the embers can get through there, fall down, and get to the combustible materials of the wood framing of the house is what we're worried about.
Correct. That's the major concern. Another concern is if someone's, they might be operating a wood burning fireplace without any issues, that might have a cracked flue in it, and now you open up a pathway for the byproducts of wood burning to escape the flue system that's meant to contain that. So it's not just the heat. Now creosote can escape outside of there. Creosote is inherently a combustible material, so over time, that creosote builds up. You're essentially building tinder inside of the chimney, and that's an area that can never be accessed where that creosote can be cleaned or removed.
Now, is this something your company would recommend repairing, or is this where your company would recommend just don't bother, give me a new liner, and let's just do away with this?
You can't repair a cracked tile.
Can't.
Yep.
Okay.
It's relining.
It's relining.
Beautiful.
The only time that you can repair a single cracked tile is if it is located at the very top of the chimney above the crown.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, just for general knowledge, when tiles have cracks like that, a good percentage of the time is due to the fact that there was a chimney fire in that chimney at some point.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then where we were at C. So C was an example of a flue that doesn't even have clay tiles in it. That's an unlined flue. It's just brick and mortar. That's something that needs to have a lining in it or a lining system installed. And D is actually something that's kind of commonly overlooked, even throughout our industry, is when the actual face of the flue tiles begin to spall and flake off. That is deterioration. That is a sign of failure, and that tile is losing its original thickness that was designed for heat resistance.
And again, that's all install a liner, right? We're done.
All install a liner, correct.
There are other options, but if you want to keep it a standard, normal fireplace, yes, that's the option.
Right. And I know you guys are a huge company. You're the biggest, I believe, in the Chicagoland area. But can you guess at roughly how many liners you install a year?
Gosh.
Maybe what percentage?
Well, you count furnace liners too, because we do those. I mean, I don't know. Thousands?
Wow. All right.
Probably, yeah.
And how do we comment when I see these unlined furnaces in your number C, I'll see those in Lincoln Park a lot on a house that's built in 1890s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been used since God knows how long, and obviously the house hasn't burned down. I mean, I guess that's not a fair question to you.
Well, the way we approach people say that to us all the time, and we say, well, lucky you, I mean, it hasn't burned down yet. We're going to tell you how it's supposed to be, and it's your choice whether you want to fix it or not. But I don't know, how do you answer that? I'm telling you how it's supposed to be. You're taking the risk, and if you don't want to do it, it's your choice, I guess.
Yeah, and my comment usually comes back to them that life is a gamble. We all have choices to make, but the bottom line is I don't want somebody else's problem now to become my problem. So I'm going to tell you that this is an issue and it should be addressed before you use it. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
right.
Correct.
They're calling us out for a professional opinion, right? It's
exactly.
NFPA recommends this.
I like using that. I always like having a third party. I'll have a lot of home inspectors that disagree with me on this, but using code references, using the NFPA, using the Chimney Sweeps Institute, all those items are good third-party things to go ahead and back up my opinion.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So once we've kind of worked our way through the inner workings of the chimney,
hang on. So should we ask for questions now, Charles, before we start on the top, or?
If anybody wants to ask questions and they're on to YouTube, they can go ahead and type them in there. I'll see it, and then I'll pop them up there.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So then exterior inspections, we're looking at the cap, we're looking at the crown, we're looking at the condition of the exiting flue tile, the chimney chase itself, the brick and mortar, and the flashing.
So let's address crown cracks, if you don't mind, and some
Sure.
of the cures. I purchased stuff from Lindemann Chimney for my inspection equipment. All right, so I get emails um, from Lindemann as well from their supply house or your supply house, forgive me. And recently I've been getting something about, I forgot what it's called, but a crown seal or something
Crown,
like that.
crown
It's a
safe.
coating.
Yeah.
What is that?
So that is a material. Let's see. Okay, so that is a material that is designed to surface coat a crown that has hairline cracks in it. So those cracks can't be significant. That is to prevent the deterioration process from going any further. So it's essentially almost like an elastomeric sealant that goes around on the top and around all four sides to prevent water entry into those cracks with our lovely seasons of freeze and thaw, popping that concrete material open and making it worse to where it is no longer a suitable repair for that crown safe, and we actually have to form and pour a new concrete crown.
And again, what's our average cost for something like that?
So if we're in the correct application where we can go ahead and just seal the crown, that's anywhere from like a $600 to $800 repair on average, but that can be vary from crown size to accessibility. If we need, if it's not just a simple ladder thrower, if we're doing it off of a roof, no, we might need scaffolding or boom. Those are all things that can raise that price.
And a rebuild of a crown? What are we looking at for that?
About 2,000.
Okay. And again, barring any unusual getting to the crown circumstances,
Correct.
right? Gotcha.
Correct. And then, these prices are your typical standard two-story home. There's easy exterior access to the chimney, and that's kind of what our standard setup is. And then, once you start putting the chimney on the interior portion of the house, center of the roof, very pitched roof, things get more involved.
Well, and it's also pretty rare that we can only pour a concrete cap on a chimney because there's almost always going to be brick below that are going to come loose.
Gotcha. And
So,
yeah, because the water gets in there, that's what's going to damage the brick, right?
yeah.
Correct.
So it brings up another thing then. I'm inside the chimney. Everything looks good from the ground outside, but yet I go into the firebox and I start seeing efflorescence inside the firebox. Is that something that I should be concerned about?
There's water getting in somewhere then. Some way, somehow that means there's moisture getting in. Whether it might not be through the exterior bricks, it might be something where the gutters might be pitched towards the chimney, slamming water into the side of it. There are areas where there might be a shoulder stone down on the lower portion of the chimney that has a gap in it that could be allowing water in.
Or there could be a furnace liner right next to the firebox that's putting that moisture in there for sure.
Correct.
And that kind of brings us to this picture here, doesn't it?
Correct. Yes. You can see that the tops or the flue systems on both of these that are running through this chimney have been repaired.
So how do I tell the difference when I'm looking at flues? If it's designed for a wood-burning fireplace or if it's designed for a gas appliance and, and they're in the same chimney. Is there a difference that I would see?
In our area, generally you will see round flue tiles that are going to be servicing the appliances down in the basement, furnace, water heater, boilers.
Except for really old homes, they might still have a rectangle or a square.
Correct.
But that's probably the only way. I mean, I don't know how you'd have to just verify which one is the fireplace and which one is the furnace somehow, I guess.
Yeah, if you have within the same chimney, you can at least, and it's two, you can at least look up the fireplace, kind of see its orientation and where it should be coming out of the top of the chimney, and naturally assume the other one's down to the appliances.
Gotcha. And wood burning fireplaces on different levels, they can or cannot share the same fluid.
They most certainly cannot. Each fireplace, each appliance system should have its own dedicated flue to it.
And,
Although you can have a water heater in a furnace, that's fine, but no, two fireplaces cannot go through one flue.
so two gas appliances is what I'm hearing. But if I have a oil appliance, I can't mix that. I can't mix fuels.
No.
I can't
No.
mix wood.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. And what we're looking at here then, I'm guessing, please tell me if I'm right or wrong, is two wood burning fireplaces that have had chimney liners installed?
I can't remember exactly where this picture is from, but I do think it is. I do think you are correct on that.
And I should see a cap, a rain cap, a spark arrestor, everything else that I'm seeing out here, I should see at the top.
Correct.
Shouldn't just be
Correct.
a liner that's open to the top. Okay.
Exactly. And then, things to look at when you're looking at the crown condition itself. Typical crowns are going to be 4 inches thick of poured concrete. It's going to overhang the bricks that are below it by at least 1.5 inches. Where the flue tiles meet the crown, it should either have a tight pour to the tile, or it should have sort of an expansion joint and sealant or a caulking around the base of the tile to the crown.
The biggest thing that we see violated in a lot of chimneys that are built is they don't put a proper concrete cap on there, like the one you're seeing right here. Yeah.
So here's an example of what improper crown should be. So that's, the bottom picture is your typical kind of mortar wash where the bricks are laid and then someone just trowels on some mortar and creates kind of like a mound from the center outwards. Or the top picture, which people will take limestone sills or limestone slabs, 4 separate pieces, and then mortar fill the center.
And that's not acceptable in any way, right?
Well, I mean, we're not going to, if it's in perfect condition and there's no issues with the chimney below that, we're going to tell them it doesn't have the proper concrete cap. And it's probably going to become an issue. The water's going to get in eventually. But yeah, if there's problems with the brick below that, when there's cracks in it, of course we're going to call it out no matter what.
I can't think of one time I ever seen either one of these two without a crack.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Probably not, yeah.
Unless it was done the day before.
Yeah. That could always be. You never know.
So condition of the bricks itself, here's your typical forms of deterioration that we'll see. Picture A is going to be failed mortar joints where you can almost see through the bricks, or none of the joint is present any longer. Picture B is efflorescence and spider cracks. So that might not be, sometimes the mortar joints might not be failed, but the bricks are failing. So that will dictate a repair as well. Or you will see picture C, where the brick faces are starting to pop off and spall.
When you talk about repairs, are you talking about a parge coat, or are you talking about remove and replace bricks?
So there is a difference. I can't remember if it's Okay, no, it's not on here, potentially. So let's go to picture A. So if you encounter something like that, that is something that is not going to be, you can just tuck point that area and put new mortar in there. The process of tuck pointing is grinding out approximately a 1/4 inch of bad mortar or failed mortar, and behind it should be solid mortar that is not sandy, not failing. Once you don't have anything for that new mortar that you're trying to put in to adhere to, then those bricks have to be relayed, and you're talking a chimney rebuild.
All three of those pictures are chimney rebuilds. There's no tuck pointing on any of those pictures.
So if I do see something like this where they schmooied a whole bunch of mortar on top of it, that's just unacceptable, right?
That just means they're trying to hide something or cover something. Correct.
If I had to say that, because occasionally, we go to new customers' homes and they'll say, well, the home inspector just said it needed tuck pointing. So that's one area where, if I would say to you guys, if you see any kind of damage like this, where it's substantial like that, we're not tuck pointing that, and it shouldn't be tuck pointed because it's not going to last. It needs to be rebuilt, and then obviously, chimney rebuilds can be $3,000. They can be $14,000. I mean, it's expensive if it's a huge chimney.
Now, I've also seen some damages in horizontal lines in the brick, and maybe you'll be addressing this, where it looks like there's water stains or everything else, and it's out in the middle of nowhere in the chimney, right? Or I'm sorry, yeah, in the chimney. It's just a horizontal line kind of, making a ring around the chimney. Thoughts on that?
That could, if there's any sort of moisture venting appliance, so boiler, water heater, furnace going into that chimney, that potentially could be the cause of that.
And all 80% furnaces and pretty much just every water heater, that they all create moisture. Is that a fair statement?
Most certainly, yes.
And I know the chimneys you're talking about, where there's just like one row where the mortar has come loose around the chimney.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can probably tuck point that. It may not last forever, but I know what you're talking about, and you don't necessarily have to rebuild that whole chimney just because one mortar joint is like that. But if the chimney has shifted because of that, that's a different story. So I guess it would depend on. We'd have to come and look at it.
And what would be the chances of I got like a gap between the clay tiles on the inside, right at that area? Would that moisture be able to get through there and damage the bricks as I'm describing?
I suppose it's possible.
It's possible, yeah.
But that's not something common you see.
Well, 90+% of the flue tile linings we look at have gaps between the tiles. So whether it's located right where that mortar joint is missing, that I don't know.
Fair enough. Thank you.
So then, as we're on the exterior, we're looking at the flashing, in condition of the flashing itself. So it can't be pulled away from the chimney. It should be nice, tightly sealed to the actual bricks. Shouldn't be rusty or brittle. We're looking for a correct installation on the flashing portion itself. Trying to think. So,
Is there anything have flashing?
Yeah, picture B is obviously a picture of flashing not even present at all. So if you guys can see that clearly, you don't see any metal pins around the base of the chimney where the chimney and roofing material meet. And then picture D is where the width of the chimney is greater than 30 inches, needs to have a cricket or a water diverter installed on the backside. And that's where the chimney and roof meet on the downslope.
because obviously the water will puddle there if you don't put one of those there, and eventually it'll leak.
And a good rule of thumb for brick width is what, about 8 inches?
General, yeah, 8.5. Yeah.
So if I got 5 bricks, I need a cricket. And what is the proper term? I heard cricket, saddle, what do we say?
Cricket, saddle, water diverter. It's kind of all three of those will defer to the same thing. We generally say cricket.
Uh-oh.
So another one that you look for, is if the chimney starts to pull from the home on an exterior chimney, and that's generally a foundation failure. So that's down at the base, but you'll be able to see sometimes the original caulk line where the chimney and siding met is now 2 to 3 inches away from the house, or you can see a lean, a gap. Those are sometimes, it's not super common, but we've seen it once in a while.
Sometimes those can be power jacked, right? I believe.
Yeah, there's a process of power jacked or mud jack to where the foundation can be lifted, bringing it back into plumb and up to the house. But that's not something our company offers. We defer to a third party or another contractor to assess that.
Interesting. And on the upper picture, what am I seeing at the top of the chimney? Is there some sort of brace up there? Yes.
That looks like that looks like an old TV antenna.
Oh, okay.
Or some old wiring, yeah, for a TV antenna. But you will see those. You will see those metal support rods on chimneys that are, freestanding out of the roof a significant amount to where they need that support rod running into the chimney to stop it from swaying. So basement inspections or crawl space inspections going to be making sure that below each fireplace there's an ash pit door or a clean out door that can open and close properly, stays in the locked position, is completely sealed to the masonry. So if it's a wood burning fireplace and someone decides to push hot ashes or hot embers down the ash dump, that they don't pop out into the basement and continue to burn. This is also your access point to ensure that you can put your phone in there, camera, or a flashlight to look up and look at the underside of the firebox to see if any wood's present. The actual foundation itself, you just want to make sure that it's not cracked, brittled, or failing in that area.
And that's a good point about getting in there, sticking a phone, and taking a picture up there. I mean, just about every one of these I look at, they're rusted shut, and you touch them and they fall out on your hand. And
Right.
I'm always afraid to even touch them, to be honest.
Right, and especially if they're that brittle, and something's in that bad a condition, we won't touch it and make it worse, and we'll just suggest its replacement.
And is that an easy replacement?
That's roughly a $200 to $300 replacement. So that pretty much covers our general inspection topics on masonry, chimneys and fireplaces.
Well, let's pull up the brochures. I mean, we didn't cover the furnace flues. That's for sure.
Correct.
Topic.
So let's do that.
So you guys definitely should be looking for, well, like Charles, you and I talked before we started this. Every gas appliance in this area that goes through a chimney needs to have a stainless steel liner, period. These are the things that I've got pictures on this brochure that of the damages that show evidence of not having a furnace liner. So the efflorescence on the left, that's a sign that there's moisture bleeding out from inside from the brick. The second one is any chimney that's got any kind of damage on the brickwork and it doesn't have a furnace liner, we're recommending it, period. End of story. It just, you get a freeze-thaw cycle going and it causes that damage. The one on the right is a lot of people get a staining on the inside of their house by their ceiling. Notice how the color of it is brown. So if you have a brown stain on your wall, a normal roof leak would not create a brown stain. It would just be wet. So that is the hydro is the moisture that it puts off, and the chlorides in your basement is the chloric. So that is a hydrochloric acid that's leaking out onto your ceiling or wall there. Classic case of not having a liner behind there. And then we go towards the bottom here. This is the worst case scenario on the right there, lower right. Once it's done enough damage, it just causes an entire blockage in the chimney. We probably in the wintertime get 1 to 3 calls a day of blockages in chimneys from furnace contractors. That's how often this stuff happens. Obviously, that is a carbon monoxide issue. We regularly go to homes where the carbon monoxide detector has gone off. So this is a major problem we see. And then on the left, this kind of shows you the yellow on the far left one is depicted as the steam. As the steam goes up the chimney, it turns to a moisture or it condensates, and then it causes damage to the chimney, damage to the clay tiles, damage to the brick on the outside, and ultimately it can let fumes into the house. So the fix to that is dropping down a stainless steel tube and having all of the appliances connected to that so that all that moisture and fumes gets up and out of the chimney properly.
You mentioned
So
stainless steel tubing, quite a few times. Is this going to be, and I guess I should back up a little bit. All right. First of all, condensing furnaces, high efficiency, they can use the chase, right? As long as nothing else is dumping in there. They can use the chimney chase to get to the outside, but that's going to be PVC plastic. Is that statement correct?
Correct, as long as there's not another appliance that needs proper venting within there.
Gotcha. And then, so mostly we're talking about 80% furnaces, water heaters and everything else. Is there any time at all that, there's any code that says that I can go ahead and discharge that furnace or water heater into a clay tile lined chimney?
well, there is no code on this. This is just what's recommended.
By the Chimney Sweeps Institute. I know I'm interrupting you, forgive me. But this is coming from Chimney Sweeps Institute, this brochure. Is that correct?
No, I made that.
Yeah, the one currently up on the screen's a Lindemann brochure.
Gotcha.
There actually, I wish there was actually no code that calls for this. I mean, it's recommended by the appliance manufacturers if you read what they, recommend. But they'll, oh yeah. So here's a brochure that's from the Chimney Safety Institute that talks about that they recommend it, but I don't think there's actually a code that calls for this.
Gotcha. And I have read manufacturer's instructions. I got one old fireman friend. They put a new furnace in there. They did not put a liner in it, and all of a sudden his carbon monoxide meter started going on. We had another one where they had a whole bunch of water damaging the inside of the house from coming in there. So it's a very common occurrence that somebody will go from a natural draft furnace to a mid-efficiency furnace and not put a liner in there. But I I just want to hear it one more time, and I agree with you if this is your statement. Lindemann Chimney Services, you guys recommend that every single clay lined chimney that has a gas appliance going into it should have, and you keep using stainless steel. I know there's aluminum out there as well, but they should have a stainless steel liner in there, right?
Correct.
Correct.
And I was just going to get to that. So aluminum is not the recommended product. If you read a manufacturer's instructions on aluminum liner, it clearly states that's not supposed to be put into an acidic environment, which is exactly what you're putting it into.
Yeah.
So it's the heating guys that do that a lot. We take aluminum liners out weekly, probably, right, Parents?
On a consistent basis.
Yeah.
They have a very short shelf life, and that's why we just don't install them here. You know, one, we don't want to go back and monitor a aluminum liner yearly, but it's not the correct application and environment for them. So they constantly, we come across them where they start to corrode and deteriorate, and they start, like, metal shavings start falling down into the flue system. And as that liner starts to deteriorate, it actually starts to build up in the base of the lining, creating a small blockage of its own.
Wow, that's good to know. Because I have heard of aluminum liners a lot, you know, just a shorter lifespan. But you know what? I'm going stainless steel recommendations every single time now. What's the cost of something like that?
Your typical appliance liner, let's say it's servicing 2 appliances, is going to be roughly around $2,300 to $2,500 installed. If you're talking a standalone water heater, you're right around like the $2,000, $1,800 mark. And then that's just based on height and access as well. That's going to vary that price.
And they have to be sized differently depending on the furnace and the water heater and how many BTUs are going up there. Is that statement right?
Correct. It's sized based on height, total appliances, and then the total BTU output from the appliances themselves. So, and one thing to look at too when you maybe come across them is that that liner or that venting system that's supporting those can be no smaller than the vent connectors coming off of the appliances. So if you have 2 6-inch, you know, vent connectors, let's say it's like 2 boilers going into the chimney, well, that liner better be 6 inches or greater in diameter.
Gotcha. And this is not insulting my profession at all, but there are going to be some people that don't know the difference between a vent, a flue, and a vent connector. Would you mind just sharing that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, of course. I'm trying to see if we can. All right. So here's kind of a good guide picture here on our CSIA brochure. So coming directly off the appliances are going to be your vent connectors, and your vent connectors are your, your connections from the appliance to the actual chimney itself.
And
They
typically
do
those
not
are
have
these single walls.
Yes, correct. It's single wall vent connectors. Correct.
But there are times where that you need to have B vent. So let's cover that while we're talking about it. Well, look, first thing we need to cover is that all those vent connectors need to go uphill towards the chimney, 1/4 inch per foot. That's definitely something you guys should call out. If you see it going downhill to the chimney, that's a problem.
Even if it's power vented, is it still a problem?
Power vent is a different application. So no, that wouldn't apply. Generally, you see those types of runs flat, or they still have some sort of rise to it.
Fair enough. And
So
then
then, you know, you're if anything over 8 feet of run to the chimney, you're supposed to start using B vent at least from that point on. Also going through a crawl space, it should be B vent. Closeness to combustibles. What is the clearances? I forget.
Well, believe it or not, I got that one memorized. Single wall gas, 6 inches. B vent gas, 1 inch.
1 inch, correct.
So you got any kind of wood around those connectors, you definitely want to have B vent there, not single wall.
And that even includes like air conditioning lines. If some of our members are downstate and they're going to be in non-metallic cable country, so that includes all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm looking at here in this picture, I see 2 vent connectors going into a chimney. Is that what I'm going to see commonly if it's lined with the stainless steel liner, or am I going to see them connected outside the chimney?
You are going to see them connected and one single connection going into that flue lining. You generally do not see 2 separate connections when that is lined with stainless steel.
It's not impossible, but yeah, generally it will be in one connection probably.
Yeah, you'll either see like a T or a Y connection running into the liner itself.
And is your process to bring that liner, and that liner is flexible, right?
Correct.
Right. And is it your process to bend that liner or make it turn so I'm going to see the corrugated part sticking out of the chimney?
No, actually we do not do that. We run a T and a snout system that is part of the stainless steel lining kit. So what that is there is a protrusion that comes out through the wall, that's stainless steel, and then down below it, behind the wall, is going to be your opening. And below the opening is actually like a reservoir or a collection area for any sort of moisture or condensation that will want to drip down, and it's very minimal amounts of that.
If you see the liner coming into the room, it's 99% of the time it's an aluminum liner.
That's a good clue. How would
'Cause-
you tell the difference?
Aluminum liners, if you see that corrugation and you see it coming through the wall, if you actually touch it, you'll be able to bend it. I mean, that aluminum is soft. It's no different than the aluminum flex connectors that you see coming off the backside of a dryer vent.
Interesting. And the stainless steel?
Stainless steel, you won't be able to bend it. There's really no flex. There's a good amount of rigidness there. But yeah, generally what happens is when you take a liner and you bend it through the wall and you eliminate that T and snout system that's down at the base of that liner, is it allows any sort of that residual moisture, anything that's inside of that liner, to come back down those vent connectors. You'll see water staining down those vent connectors, and that actually can rust out the appliances. So then, as Mike touched on, the difference in vent connectors is you have your standard single wall with your 6-inch clearance. You have your B vent, which is a snap lock type application or vent connector that runs to the chimney, and that's for runs from anything over 8 feet from the appliance to the chimney, and that's double walled pipe. So that's a system that keeps the gases hotter, so that it doesn't give them the ability to cool and condense before it reaches the flue system to turn up and out.
I'm learning a lot of stuff today, guys. Thank you. What
Sure.
else you got? Keep feeding me.
Are there any other questions on furnace liners? I think we've covered aluminum and.
Yeah, I'm bombarding you guys with the questions. I'm that annoying guy that's asking you all the questions right now.
That's okay.
No, that works for us.
So let's say that a home inspector wants to, let's back up a little bit. Tell me the difference between a level 1 inspection and a level 2 inspection.
Level 1 inspection is going to be just a simple, as it pertains, easy access areas and it's more so just solely a visual inspection, meaning visual, anything that you can see just with a flashlight. You're not taking anything apart. You're not looking into any areas. You really don't go into the attic. You don't go into a crawl space. That is what you're going to get with a level 1 inspection. A level 2 inspection, the difference is, that's a camera inspection of a fireplace flue system. So that's a live video feed in one form or another, that's going up on top of the chimney via a ladder, that's going into the attic when accessible, that's going into the crawl space when accessible. And if that's also, if we're looking at an appliance that's actually opening up the vent connectors down where the vent connectors entered the chimney to look up through that flue system down in the basement.
Let's talk about the vent connectors in a level 2 on one of those chimneys. I mean, is there really a reason, and I'm just going to share my analogy and you go ahead and beat me up for this. Is there even a reason to do a level 2 for a gas appliance at chimney? And my rationale behind that would be, if I have a gas appliance, I should have a liner in it. And if I don't have a liner in it, whether it's in good shape or not, I should put a liner in it. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that would be a pretty fair assumption. The only thing that we would want to do that sort of inspection is to open up the vent connectors to make sure that nothing is blocking them down below. And nothing that's built up in that area, whether it be potentially bricks, whether it be debris, if someone had lack of a cap, we find birds and nesting material down there. So we just want to ensure that that area doesn't have a blockage.
I mean, that's something that I tell my guys to do all the time, is take that apart. I know that you guys would never do that on a home inspection, but.
And I wouldn't say never.
Oh, no. Well,
limits what we do, but it's not a common practice.
Sure. Well, and we would not take it apart if we felt like we couldn't put it back together. I would never tell my guys to do that. If that vent connector's, 50 years old and it's ready to fall apart, I would not suggest we take it apart either. I'm just going to, then at that point, I'm going to suggest replace the vent connectors. And at that time, we can, inspect the inside of the chimney.
And you guys do all that too? The vent connectors, everything going back to the furnace?
Sure.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Correct. Yeah, because it's very rare that our liner sometimes comes back through the same exact spot where, 2 separate vent connectors were going into the chimney. So we have to rerun and rework all of that. So it's all new vent connectors as well.
And then going back to the wood burning fireplaces, if you find anything wrong, even some of those hairline cracks that you talked about earlier that open up, you don't really repair those. And we might have said this before, I don't remember if it was live or not, but you don't repair those. The solution is put a stainless steel liner in there and that's it, right?
Correct. To restore that into original working condition, it's going to be the process of a stainless steel lining, parging the smoke chamber, and insulating that liner itself. Alternative would be, maybe not repairing that area and a customer going ahead and choosing the route of a gas insert, in which those have their own venting systems that come off the back of them, which dictates we don't have to repair the old flue system.
Is it possible to put a ventless?
It is possible to put a ventless in certain applications. Obviously, you can't put ventless in a bedroom. That is a no-no. So if you ever see a ventless log set located in a bedroom, unless the local codes allow for it, or its BTU output is lower than 10,000 BTUs. That's the only time a ventless set can be in a bedroom.
That's interesting. Because I remember reading, or I know we can't take combustion air for appliances from a bedroom or bathroom. So does that count for all fireplaces?
Well, that should tell you something about ventless gas logs when they can't be put into a bedroom. They're really not something that we recommend for a whole lot of different, If you read the tags on a ventless gas log set, there's so many cautions and warnings, and
And
we
it's not
don't.
just
We don't
one tag. There's 3 tags printed on both sides.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah, lots of literature on them, and it tells you can only run them for a certain amount of hours consistently. That you have to have outside combustion air, so that usually requires cracking a door or a window to use them. That's why we do them very infrequently here.
And I am seeing them installed on a lot of very high-end homes along the North Shore and Lincoln Park, Lakeview, all those areas there. And that's all new constructions now. So they are common.
Yeah.
My guess is a lot of people don't use them. That'd be my
I don't
guess.
think they do. They just sit there and they look pretty. I would agree
Yep.
with you on that. So, tell me about Lindemann. Part of your name is supply. All right. So you guys sell products too, right?
Yes, we supply chimney caps, chimney liners, chimney dampers, vent connectors, anything like that to other contractors in the area too.
And what about inspection equipment or tools? Let's say some of our home inspectors want to start doing a little bit more on fireplaces. Do you have anything that's affordable that they can use?
Well, I'm not, right, that guy is not available right this second. Can we come back to that?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And how many offices do you guys have?
We have one office located in Lake Bluff.
Okay. And what area do you service?
Anywhere from just north of Milwaukee down south in Illinois to St. Charles, roughly, and anywhere else in between.
Fair enough. And how many crews do you have out there?
As far as technicians, we have a total of 18 technicians, and roughly 6 paired up installation crews, and probably another 10 helpers as well.
Outstanding. So can we look at a couple of those other brochures that we're going to make available for people?
Yep. So this brochure gives you an actual good representation too of your typical chimney system. So you'll have one flue system here on the right hand side that's servicing your fireplace. The other flue system, you can see the difference in diameter of the flue lining that's installed running down servicing your appliances. The biggest thing with this brochure is to kind of dispel the notion of just because you have a failed masonry flue system for your fireplace that it is okay to just install a set of gas logs. And the biggest thing is, cracked tiles, gaps between the tiles, will allow the potential for carbon monoxide to come back into the home.
And when I'm looking on the underside, is this the same brochure? Because I know we mentioned it earlier about what I should be seeing when a liner for a wood-burning fireplace is properly installed. I've seen everything from fiberglass insulation sitting around this thing.
Correct. So sometimes you'll see companies will not seal a liner into place when you look up with that heat-rated mortar, so that refractory mortar. They'll just use a fiber ceramic wool to kind of stuff it and pinch it into place, and then they will backfill the insulation on top of it around the new flue lining and within the existing cavity of the chimney. That's just a practice that we don't do because we want to make sure that if that liner ever drops or moves, any of the insulation materials don't come down with it. So that's why we take that heat-rated mortar, that refractory mortar, and seal the bottom of the liner. I think if we go to this brochure, so if you look up from the base of the firebox and you look up the flue system, you'll see the bottom of the lining, which I'm kind of going around here, and here's that heat-rated mortar creating that bell-shaped area and funnel for the smoke chamber to the bottom of the new flue. That's your indicator that a flue has been relined properly.
What's that second picture right below that I'm looking at?
So this is actually an area where looking up into the smoke chamber through the damper, where we found wood present that has charred and is about to ignite. And alternatively, this picture down here is one where it's on the face of the fireplace. The smoke chamber wasn't parged, and heat was able to transfer to the face of the fireplace to the framing materials that are up against it and slowly chars that out as well. So that just kind of hammers home the importance of parging the smoke chamber. And so here's your before and after photos of a liner installed. It parged into place, but then once again, on all of our materials, we want to give people the necessary information to make an informed decision. And here's the code from the NFPA on why the smoke chamber has to be parged.
Now, do you guys put a signature on your work at all? I mean, is there like a stamp or something I would see in that parging to know it was you?
No.
I've only seen the after once.
Okay.
And I know you do a ton of work, but maybe I just haven't had the luxury of inspected too many. But I have seen the after, and I
Sure.
shouldn't say once. It's very few times, but mostly I see the before. Or
Gotcha.
it's a real sloppy coat of parging in there. So.
Correct. And one of the key indicators too is if it's actual refractory mortar versus the masons who did it while they were on site, is you can see the trowel marks or float marks of the mason's trowel in the mortar, versus when the refractory mortar dries and cures in a parged smoke chamber, it's very smooth and it looks almost ice-like.
Well, how do you get it smooth like that? How do you install it?
We're doing it by hand. We're physically crawling in from the bottom of the fireplace, standing in there while a second person is handing us that mortar and installing it all by hand and then smoothing it out.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot involved into that. So that's why Mike said earlier that we're actually removing the cast iron damper to get that working access. We might even have to remove a row or two of the bricks of the back wall of the fireplace just to physically fit up in there. So it's not anything that's just sprayed in place. There's an alternative material that can do that, but then you don't know if it's evenly coating the area or not. It still leaves the bricks exposed sometimes. So best practice is to do it all by hand. Let's see, another brochure of ours, just kind of an example of what we put out to our customer for, wood burning fireplace education and the defects that can't be present, kind of what we covered earlier.
So there's a picture. The one with the flames is of a chimney fire that has actually escaped the chimney and now has gotten to the house. So, you know, that's nothing that happens all the time, but we want people to know that, yeah, now it can get actually out of the chimney and get to the house and start your house on fire.
And it has happened.
And it has happened, you bet.
It has happened. So, I know I've been on a few chimney fires, and I actually had one inspection that I told them that there's so much damage to it, and a lot of it has to do with the same kind of pictures you were showing here. And I told them don't use the fireplace till you get somebody out here to repair it and start getting some cost on it. The owners of the home didn't believe me, and they decided to light a fire in it anyway, and they did end up burning their house down, and obviously the deal got canceled. So.
Yeah, that we've been to them. The aftermath is devastating, as you can imagine.
Well, so if you go to the right there, Charles, it says National Fire Protection Agency. So here's, you know, you keep talking about, you know, can it be repaired? Well, this is what they're requiring anyway. If a flue liner in a chimney has softened, cracked, or otherwise deteriorated so that it no longer has the ability to contain the products of combustion, i.e. heat, moisture, creosote, and flue gases, it shall be removed and replaced, repaired, or relined. So from our perspective, remove and replace it with a stainless steel liner is what we're going to recommend. We don't have a repair for cracked tiles or for mortar missing between tiles, none that we consider a decent repair or a liner. So again,
Look at it, though, you talk about $14,000 max to, or not max, but it could always be more. But you know, anywhere from 5 to 14,000 to rebuild something, as opposed to 2,500 to drop a liner in.
well, fireplace liners are probably on average between 6 to 8.
That's good to know. I'm sorry I misunderstood.
Furnace flues are, you know, 2 to 2,500 or 3. I'd say 2 to 3.
So I always like to give numbers on the high end, and if somebody gets it cheaper, God bless them. You know, they're usually happier with me than if I give them on the low end. So I would lean more towards the 8,000 when people are starting to ask me to reline it. But that's still a big chunk of change.
Right, correct.
Still a big chunk of change. Anything else that you guys have that you would add? I mean, this has been fantastic, and I can't thank you enough.
Oh well, we haven't covered prefab chimneys yet.
Let's do it. I'm here.
All right. So we might not want to do that yet, just in case. Boom, 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 boom. So yeah, your prefab chimney is fairly more common nowadays. I would say. You see them maybe just as much as masonry, fireplaces and chimneys. Way different construction.
I think I'm on
You know.
your screen, so if you want to get rid of me, you can
Oh.
click that little X on there.
Yeah.
You
Well.
guys don't need to see me.
No offense at all. But yeah, so you know, prefabs are kind of a built-in place fireplace that has, you know, a lot of framing around them. So it consists of a firebox, which is the actual insulated sheet metal fireplace unit. And then on top of it is going to be its snap lock chimney pipe. It's usually double wall or triple walled. Every time that pipe passes through a story of living space, there's going to be a fire stop present. The chase itself just refers to the structure that encloses the system. Chase top is the metal covering on top of the chimney, and then that has a storm collar and a termination cap. So those are the general components of a prefabricated fireplace.
So, triple wall flues, are they? What's the clearance around those for wood burning?
Triple walls aren't too common anymore,
They're
but
not?
those are usually a 1 to 2 inch clearance.
All right.
Your double walls are roughly a 2 to 3 inch clearance, depending on the make and model manufacturer.
Gotcha. And is there a way to tell from the outside? General rule of thumb.
Not specifically if you're looking at the structure. Generally, those structures are wide enough and big enough to encompass that without any clearance issues. The best thing, though, is if you have access, and I might have a picture later on in this presentation, to the attic. Let's say it's running through the center of the home, and that pipe isn't located on an exterior wall. If you can get in the attic, there is generally a sticker on that pipe saying the clearance on it that cannot be removed when the system was installed.
That's good to know. Now you buy this as a kit, right? When you buy the fireplace.
It's all a kit, so it's seen as all one inclusive system. So generally, depending on what's failed within that system, it usually dictates the whole rip out and replace of that fireplace, its vent system, and its termination.
Is this something that Lindemann Chimney does?
We do.
I mean, as far as you guys go, as far as what you really should be looking for, or are you gonna? Okay. I'll let you
We can
go through this.
we can just kind of go through this real quick. I mean, really, there's two types of prefabricated fireplaces. There's a radiant system that you see up top, or there's a circulating system that you see down below. Circulating system is easily identified with louvers at the top and bottom, meaning heat's going to be passing into the space via those louvers. So the biggest thing with the circulating system is there can't be anything blocking those louvers. So you're inspecting the fireplace, you see an upper set of louvers, but you don't see the lower portion because it might be buried underneath some facing material. That's something you guys should call out, because there's always going to be an upper and lower portion of that air-cooled system.
Or glass doors. You'll see that a lot when they put glass doors on there that are not made for that model. They'll cover up those louvers, and that's definitely a no-no.
Also, another good way to get some information on it is if you peek your head into the actual fireplace, there's going to be a placard attached to the unit itself. Sometimes it might not be easy to read, but here's one that's nice and clear that just gives you some general information on it. You can kind of see this second area down below gives you some clearances. Gives you the clearances to the side, to the back, to the side wall of the opening. And this actually will also, if you see it in the upper right portion of the tag, will identify if it's designed for solid fuel or gas.
And it clearly states on there that you can only use parts from the model chosen, and you can't mix and match parts on these things.
And most of it is because they had their products tested through a testing agency like Underwriters Laboratories, and obviously they don't buy other people's parts and say, yeah, see if they work in here too. So that's our main thing. It's only been listed for their appliance or their parts.
Exactly. It's tested and listed as a kit. Yeah.
Where would I find this tag? Is that going to be in the firebox itself?
It's going to be in the firebox, usually in the upper right or upper left-hand portion of the fireplace, right inside of the firebox. Sometimes you'll see them kind of on like the very front, but that's very rare.
I'm going to be looking for the gas or wood burning stuff on there. Obviously, we see a lot of these, and they are wood burning. But now I'm going to be eyeballing for that tag.
Well, and just be forewarned, like Barrett said, you're never going to see one like this. They're all covered with soot and creosote. You can barely read them. I mean, it's a pain.
Yeah. So sometimes it's a damp rag, and you might be able to read it. So when you're looking at the actual firebox, you know, the firebox is comprised of 3 to 4 refractory panels within the actual unit. So the refractory panels are designed to keep heat off of the sheet metal that's the actual box that's behind it. So that's to prevent heat transfer. So what we're inspecting in this area is cracking of the actual panels. So if the crack is wider than the width of a nickel, or you can fit a nickel into it, or you could see directly through it and you can see the sheet metal, those panels have to be replaced.
And they are easily replaced?
They are easily replaced. You know, and that's the design is only replace the panel that is damaged. If, you know, 2 out of the 3 panels are good, we're only going to replace the 1. A lot of times we do get calls for us to come out because there potentially was noted on an inspection that there's a hairline crack in a refractory panel and it's damaged. That's not something that we'll actually replace. It's something that we tell the customer that needs to be monitored until it's actually broken in half and once again gets to the width wider than a nickel. Hairline cracks are going to occur just with expansion and contraction. That's something that's inevitable. The second photo is where the gas line, if there happens to be a log lighter that comes into the firebox present, that has to be completely sealed around that, especially in wood burning, because outside of that area, hot embers can jump out, and that's just framing and 2x4s behind there.
And what's it sealed with?
It can be with a heat-resistant caulk or a refractory mortar.
Is there a color code to that heat refractory caulk?
There's multiple different colors. It can be red. It can be translucent. We've even seen it stuffed with a heat-rated ceramic wool, as long as it's white in nature and not like a yellow house insulation or a pink, like, you know, R13. Then, you know, when you're looking up, we kind of look at the top of the firebox. We want to make sure that that damper's functioning. It opens and closes easily. We want to look for water staining that might be present or any sort of rusting. That's something that will compromise the integrity of the box, because, you know, if that metal is rusting or failing on the underside, you can only imagine the sheet metal that's on top of it that has worn out through there.
So if we see any rusting like that, Charles, we're calling that fireplace unsafe for use and needs to be replaced.
Okay.
So that's one that you guys clearly can see without running a camera through. Because, I mean, just, you know, right behind there could be combustibles. We don't know. And if it's starting to rust, we got to call it out.
And now we're talking about flaky rust, or are we talking about any surface rust?
Any sort of surface rust.
Wow. Well, I'm going to follow suit. I'm doing the same thing.
And by the way, these models are only really supposed to last 20 years.
That's another good thing to know. Now, is that 20 years with a lot of use, or does the use not even matter?
That I would say that their general lifespan's 20 to 30 years, whether it be a significant amount of use or minimal amount of use. You know, they were designed as a kit, and when these came out on the market, you know, backstory on them was these were sold at like your Sears and Montgomery wards, where any homeowner can just put them in yourself. So when they were installed 60s and 70s, they were generally installed wrong.
But the major reason that they fail and they get rust on them is those chase tops at the top of the chimney, which we'll probably be getting to here at some point. That's the major place that we see the leakage coming in.
And as Mike talked about earlier, if you see a set of glass doors on these fireplaces, they're the design for a prefab door so the fireplace doesn't overheat when it's in use is there's a track system on the top and the bottom of the doors, and the doors actually sit inside of that frame. A masonry door is going to be like a pressure mount, or you'll see screws that are driven into the actual firebox where it, of course, where it actually covers the whole entire face of the unit. And that changes the engineering of the fireplace and designs, which can cause a potential overheating situation when the fireplace is in use. So yeah, I mean, as we touched upon earlier, these are just general numbers on clearance to combustibles. The information tag is going to, if you can read it and you can Google search, the make and model, you can almost find every installation manual that's out there for each fireplace, and look up at the specific clearances. But to the flue system, it's generally 2 inches.
Gotcha. Most of these are also going to have to be like 2 feet higher than anything within 10 feet above the roof line, right?
Correct. Still meets the same code height for a masonry chimney or an appliance chimney. Flue system condition. There can't be any rust present within the flue itself. If any of the pipe, if you can see in this upper left-hand photo, is either kind of buckled or warped, that means that there was a high heat or chimney fire that took place within that flue system that's actually started, that buckles the pipe. It also can turn it almost like a bluish purplish color on that lower right-hand picture, to which that flue system then has to be replaced.
The manufacturer's instructions clearly state that if there's a chimney fire, that it should be replaced.
And you mean replace everything, top to bottom?
Then it's everything, unless we run into the rare situation where maybe the fireplace is on the newer end, meaning it was manufactured within the last 3 to 5 years. Then if there's no issues with the actual firebox itself, we might be able to just replace the flue system.
Still never a small repair, because we have to take the front of the fireplace off to access that. So it's not like you just dropping this tube down in there. You gotta basically break open the front of the fireplace to do that repair.
And the way this flue systems are designed is it's a snap lock pipe. So once it's snapped together, it's in place. It will not pull apart, and it actually has a little bit of play for expansion and contraction, just because heat's running through it. So if you camera inspect it, or you look up the flue system and you have a nice bright flashlight and you see screws penetrating that inside flue pipe, that is something that is clearly stated in all manufacturers' installation manuals, that you cannot have screws going into the inner flue pipe.
Now, I have had these, whether they were never put together right in the first place or whatever, but they have been apart and shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I did end up seeing it one time in a house in Evanston, actually. And so it does happen, I guess.
It does. It does, yeah. And that could just be improper original installation.
That's incredibly dangerous though when that happens. I mean, you got combustibles back behind there.
Easily, right? You're funneling it there to where all the wood frame is. So absolutely.
And these photos just illustrate, this is the upper photo is if you were able to actually get into the chase or the cavity, and see where the transition between one floor to another, where that fire stop should be present. But more commonly, if the fireplace is located in the center of the home and it's passing up through the attic, you want to make sure that there is no attic insulation up against the pipe, and that there's an attic shield present around the base of the flue. And that's to prevent, if anyone decides to come in and do any blown-in insulation, that doesn't build up against the flue pipe, creating a potential for ignition of that insulation.
We will regularly see, though, when you go in the attic, Charles, we'll regularly see the pipe is too close to the wood is charred, or insulation up against the pipe. That's a fairly common thing we'll see.
So here's just an example of where we've taken the actual chase top off. It gives you an idea of how the piping system runs up through it. And the bottom photo is when people come in and do blown-in insulation or insulate the wall cavities, and that falls down and sits on top of the actual fireplace. And those are unseen behind the wall type issues.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah. I mean, I think just inherently throughout the industry, prefabricated fireplaces are one of the more dangerous types of fireplaces out there.
The problem is you can't really, you can't inspect them very well because everything's, hidden.
And that's a big problem in every aspect in our business.
Sure.
So many things that are behind drywall, whatever, walls, you just can't see. Now, this is something we commonly see.
Yes.
Yep, I'm sure you do. So, you're right. Go ahead, Charles.
No, I was going to say, help me guide my clients.
Okay. Well, I mean, first and foremost, the biggest thing you see is your rusted chase tops. Generally they're rusting because they're made out of a galvanized metal. They don't have proper cross breaks in them that are designed to shed water from the center outwards to the sides. You might see this little band that's below the cap where the chase top and cap meet. The storm collar, that might not be present, or that might not be completely sealed or have silicone around it. So the biggest thing up top is going to be the chase top, and that's just an entry point for water to just dump down that chase right onto the unit, and that's where we'll see that rust around the damper. Usually, it's because of those chase tops failing.
So what's my cure? Is it replacement, painting?
So yeah, generally, when you see rusted galvanized chase, they're not the correct design and construction. So we're going to replace it. So that means taking off the old chase top, taking off the storm collar, taking off the cap, sliding a new either stainless steel or aluminum chase top in place, putting in a new storm collar, and reattaching the cap.
So Charles, I tell my guys, even if it's not rusted, but it's not pitched properly, call it out. And I think you guys should too. If you see a completely unrusted chase top, but it's pitched to the middle, that should be called out. It's going to become a problem.
It's just a matter of time. Is that
You bet.
And I've seen where there's water stains, circles on there. So even
There
if it's like August, September, and it hasn't rained in a long time, we still have evidence that it's holding water there.
You bet. That's perfect. So the recommended repair is stainless or cast aluminum?
Mm-hmm.
We don't ever put up another galvanized one. It's just like, that's a joke. So stainless or cast aluminum is what we recommend. And that both of those come with lifetime warranties, by the way.
Which is important to know.
And average cost on those is
1,600 or so, 14.
I mean, you get a super huge chimney. It might be more than that, but your average one is 1,600 maybe.
We covered a lot. So we got prefab, we got wood burning or masonry. Do you have anything at all, like samples of what those ventless ones look like and the tags that we would see?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can always Google it.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull something up here shortly. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to touch on.
I'm gonna go see about the chim scan. Hang on a second. Oh yeah, you're gonna need, so it's about great.
If you have all the route, you just want to replace it. Let me see that.
Okay. You still there?
I am.
Okay. So for an average setup for a smart scan is about $200, and he's going to try to grab me one so I could show it to everybody. But obviously you're going to want rods to go with that to run it up the chimney. So by the time you buy a bunch of rods and all the other stuff, you're looking at maybe $1,000.
All right.
So there are some home inspectors that are running these cameras up, only the clean chimneys. You don't want to be, you guys probably don't want to get in the business of running them up dirty chimneys, because then you're going to get soot all over somebody's home. So you're going to have to shine a flashlight up there and say, okay, it's clean. I can scan it. Here's what I'm charging to do that. But those other guys, if it needs the cleaning, they just recommend us, and then we would go and clean it first.
And I
You
get
can't.
it, but there's a difference. What's a normal charge for a cleaning?
$289.
All right, so round up $300. But then we're still talking, if there's a repair, you're still looking at $6,000.
Right.
You know, to put a liner in there. So even if it is dirty, I get, you know, nobody wants to bring dirt and everything else in the house, but we only, or somebody buying a home, they only have 5 business days to make that decision. And if we're already there, it's kind of something that our clients want to know. That's the bottom line.
Well, true, but if it's really dirty, you're not going to be able to see what you need to see.
Fair enough.
I mean, there's dirty, and then there's caked on creosote and stuff like that. You're not going to be able to see through that, so you don't want to. That's a waste of your time and their time if it's really caked on. But if it's, you know, a light soot, maybe you can still sneak the camera up in there without making too much of a mess. Yeah.
And then, would just bring up another point. I know you mentioned creosote being flammable. Is Does it get to a certain thickness? Is there a certain thing that I could see where it's like, hey, it's time now to get this clean?
Let's pull up that too. We have a brochure on that too that we can pull up on pictures of some glazed creosote. That will probably help you guys. Hang on a sec. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
So there's a bunch of different pictures there of what a glazed creosote is. It's a shiny, baked on creosote. That is the stuff that will really take off and cause a chimney fire, or at least there's a bigger chance of it causing a chimney fire. So you can see how caked on it can be. And then like the lower left one there kind of shows like what after a chimney fire, how it can be flaky. I don't know if you guys have ever seen one after a chimney fire, but it's just like a flake. The creosote like flakes up. So anyway, to get glazed creosote off of a chimney is not a standard chimney cleaning. You know, it's not going to be $289 to get the creosote out of the top two chimneys there. We do either a mechanical cleaning or we can even do a chemical cleaning. I'd say we don't do very many chemical cleanings, pretty rare because they're pretty expensive, but a mechanical cleaning is going to run you $599 to up to $1,000 for a taller chimney. And basically we got to burn that stuff off with whips. Sometimes we use chains. And you're never going to be able to tell the condition. Like, you guys would never want to run a camera through a chimney like that because you're not going to be able to tell anything except for the fact that it's got a lot of creosote in it.
So that obviously needs to be cleaned first.
Yeah. So you guys would want to stay away from that for sure. All right, how do I get out of here?
And so, as we talked about our kind of scanning capabilities, simply, this is just a housing for our phones. So our phones run to a Bluetooth connection to our field laptops, and it's a live feed where our phone will sit into this housing. Plexiglass slides over our phone. There's a tension screw that holds it in place so that glass doesn't ever want to pop off as we're scanning. And flanked on both sides are two LED lights. And so that gives us, as we kind of connect our rods to it, that gives us a live feed to look at the entire flue system and to go ahead and do a 360 spin around each joint of the flue tile, around each flue tile, to ensure that there isn't any damage present. And that's just kind of our scanning process. So generally we engage with the customer, we have them sit down with us, watch everything live so they don't think that we're kind of trying to pull any punches or that's not their fireplace or chimney. So they can just see everything with us, and we're just educating them along the way.
And again, any damage, it doesn't matter how big or small, we're dropping a liner is the proper repair.
Correct. Correct.
And then this, by the way, these will fit into a prefab chimney also.
Yep.
Most. There are some dampers where they won't fit through, but most it will fit into a prefab fireplace, so you can scan that too.
And you don't worry about skids or guides or anything like that. You just flip it.
Yeah. We're simply just rotating our rod when we're in there. If it's a bigger flue system, sometimes we'll take like a 4-inch chimney cleaning brush that will attach to right up above this, and that just gives it a guide so that doesn't kind of like smack into the flue tile walls, and it keeps it nice and centered within the flue system.
I love it. So you get a few button lock push rods, you get that, you get a nice rod caddy, and
Get one brush maybe.
one brush to help with all that. That's fantastic. Anything else that
What else? Oh, you wanted to see a picture of a fan, right?
Oh, that's right. Thanks for remembering that. Yes, please.
There's basically only one chimney fan in the industry. It's called an Enervex, and they're extremely well made. It's like a 2-year warranty, but they last forever, and they do work well. Generally people don't like the fan because it makes noise. So, but for certain applications where it's absolutely needed, they do come in handy.
Now, do those have to be cleaned every so often?
Yes, if it's a wood burning fireplace, it's going to be cleaned on your normal cleaning cycle of every 36 to 40 fires.
36 to 40 fires. So that's another good thing to remember. I'm going to bring you guys back up again. So when we have somebody with a wood burning fireplace, that's what we're recommending, right? It doesn't matter how many logs or once a year, or it's every time you have 40 fires, you bring somebody out.
Correct. So the NFPA will recommend a yearly inspection if you intend to use the fireplace. If you've used it more than 40 times in wood burning applications, then it should be cleaned and inspected.
Well, that's fantastic. Well,
We also offer,
that's
our service company also offers a way to track that. We actually give people free firewood. They have to come into our office to get it. We get it in by the truckload, but then we can track, how much wood they're burning, and then so we tell them, okay, you've burned enough wood, you need to clean your chimney or inspect it.
Now that's a nice thing to let our clients know. I love it. So
People that are close by take advantage of it. If it's a long drive, people aren't driving too long to get it, but it's free firewood.
exactly. I don't blame them at all. I would too. I think from here I'm just going to say thank you. I want to let everybody know that you guys have volunteered to take part. You are going to be a vendor member of our association, so we are going to get you onto our Facebook page. This video is going to be up forever, and also if anybody has any questions, that they can always ask it on our Facebook page, and you're going to be there. I do believe Lindemann is one of the biggest companies, and they're the biggest for a reason. You guys have a very impressive track record, all right, quite frankly. And I'm proud to refer every client of mine that I run into, and all these numbers, believe it or not, really help me out a lot. When my clients want to know how big of a problem it is, they always want to associate $1 to it. So that
Sure.
helps me quite a bit, and I really appreciate that. So, anything else that you want to add? We got your website up there. I got your email up there. Your phone number is up there. I'm going to put all the links to the stuff that we looked at on here, and I'm just going to say thank you, and then you have the final word.
We appreciate the time, guys, and if you ever have any questions, let us know. And we're glad to always help with trainings like this.
Me too. This was fantastic. Thank you again.
All right.
You guys have a good day.
Thanks,
All right,
Charles.
Thanks, Charles.